Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Ash Ghandehari is a food and beverage manufacturing insider turned Ironman, an entrepreneur, an environmentalist, an inspirational speaker, and is all about helping people live their miracle. While on his training journey of completing over 20 marathons and I think 7 Ironmans, including the World Championship in Kona, he was inspired to replace sugary, unhealthy drinks with his creation, Hyburst. This passion to help improve athletes' fitness and health expanded to Hyburst's mission to reduce plastic waste and pollution caused by the food and beverage industry. Ash has been described as living expansively, and today he continues to do this in a number of ways. One of which is through his popular FitXTalks podcast, which are short 10-minute talks that bring the world's greatest minds in fitness, mindset and wellness to support you in living your best life. Also, through his wife's company, HeartCore Leadership, he is connecting with people and helping them truly live their best life. Ash, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ali. Thanks for having me in. That sounds really great. And I expect to deliver on what I'm sharing there, or you just shared there about me.
Well, it's all true. And it's funny because most of the time you talk to someone about fitness and you sort of just want to stay on fitness and health. But with you, I feel like we need to talk about so much more than that. Let's just start, though, with fitness. And how did you even get into fitness in the first place?
If I was to go back to, my early childhood, that's where I would say it started. My uncle and my father were like very big on, if you're moving your body, then you're moving your mind, you're moving everything else, and things in life just tend to move. And that was just instilled in me at a young age. So they took me to a swimming pool at the local, community back in the day in Iran. And I was involved in team handball, which doesn't get played that much here in the US, but in Iran it was a pretty popular sport, in soccer. And so, I would say I got involved just being a kid, and enjoying that and just keeping that in my life.
It's funny you say that, just being a kid. I don't know if being a kid these days necessarily leads to that, but thankfully when we were kids it did. And where are you today with your training?
Today I don't do Ironmans. At the time when I did the World Championship, I had a 1-year-old who's now 3.5 years old. So in the last 2.5 years, I don't really train for Ironmans. I stay active. My wife and I are super active. We live in California. We are privileged and blessed enough to be near the ocean. So we get to run PCH. We get to cycle on PCH. Oceanfront cycling, which is beautiful. And so that's how I stay active, is running, swimming, cycling still, just not training for, let's say, an Ironman, but still training for life.
Awesome. And so you'd consider yourself pretty fit still?
Oh, absolutely. Fit from a standpoint that is different than the way I defined it before. So, with FitXTalks, which, we've had you on, which is amazing. With FitXTalks, we're really committed to fitness being redefined. So it's not necessarily what you do and what you do with your body and what you put in your body, but it's beyond that. It's how you think. It's how you manage relationships. It's how you choose to live your life. So yes, the physical component is certainly important. What you put in your body is also who you become. Yes, that's important as well. So nutrition is extremely important. And I think something that doesn't get talked about often is fitness in terms of who you are. I mean, you can have the greatest body, you can have great nutrition, but you may not treat people well. Well, that's not really fit in terms of the world. You may not be living, with intention in mind in your life and your well-being, in terms of like you leave the place better than you stepped into it. And I also talk about that in terms of the world. So really being into living in terms of fitness to me means now being expansive in your views on how you live your life. So really having an expansive mind along with that. So, if you're training in terms of your physical well-being, and you're training in terms of putting good food, nutrition in your body so that you can, have that, longevity, I think often people miss the mind. And I hone in there in helping people expansively live so that they're living their vision, they're living that miracle life that's available for every one of us.
Yeah, that's an interesting point you make there too, about being fit, not just in the physical realm, but just being fit for life in terms of everything. And I guess I've got a bit of a yoga background. It's like people come to yoga. It's like, what about yoga off the mat?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I guess through your amazing interviews that you've had, you must have had some amazing guests on the show. What have you learnt, just a couple of things from them that you wish you knew back in the days of Kona?
I wish I would have known how important. I had a speaker on, Bob Roth, and he talks about transcendental meditation, so TM meditation, and I didn't realize how much progress can be made with meditation. And I don't want to promote any specific meditation per se, but the amount of progress that can be made, from a mental perspective and from putting you in a state where, you can envision and create is really powerful. And I think that's one thing that I would say, an area that I didn't connect on, being in the food and beverage industry. So I had an insight in nutrition, had insight into red beets, and not, before people thought of red beets as a great recovery drink, things like that. I had some insight into those areas. So I would say nutrition was a benefit, and physical, of course, the trainings, I was getting, coaches to support me on that. But an area that I wasn't really looking at is in my mind again. And that's why kind of my podcast, hence, FitXTalks, is this redefining fitness. But I wish I would have honed in on that area and understood, meditation, how important meditation can be in creating.
And do you think that would have helped with your success as an athlete?
Absolutely. I think as athletes, we're often told, be sure to incorporate rest days and be sure to incorporate, we hear that. We hear have rest days, get proper rest. If you're not feeling well, get rest, recover, and then, tackle your training, get back into training and have, active recovery days per se. So we talk about recovery, but having meditation is really true recovery, and having that worked into a plan. Wow, there's a power to that. And I think sometimes that's missed, when we're, you look at people that are training and are going after a race. I don't know if you're a recreational marathoner even, or a half marathon, or a 10K runner, even those of us, we have a certain personality type. We're drivers. We are the type of people that create plans, follow programs, and create results. And sometimes with that mindset comes this other aspect, and that is just being supportive to your body, and taking the time out and creating and taking the time out as a way of knowing, hey, you know what, taking the time out can create, incremental results. So we think that doing creates the results, and sometimes it's that piece that creates exponential results.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I've heard you talk about that and referring to an acronym that you used to use, which was LIFE, and the E meaning execution. And you've sort of changed your tune on that. And I now believe you use E as being enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I have this acronym LIVE. And it's interesting. I just did a podcast with a good friend of mine, Steve Weatherford, on this, and who was a former NFL pro punter, and he's also a Super Bowl champion. And his kicking is what caused it. And he uses a similar acronym. He called it RACE. And I'm like, wow, it's an interesting. All of us achievers have these acronyms. And for him, it was the same thing. Execute is the E. And I don't know if he's changed his, but for me, I changed my E. And LIVE is the acronym I use. And it was create a lasting dream or a lasting vision. Integrate it in your life, meaning talk about it, create it, be in action with it, integrate it. If it's not in your life, it's not going to create. Venture and do things differently. So if you're doing the same old thing, you're going to get the same old result. If you want to break the 4-minute mile barrier, you can't do the same training results that have been around for years or the ones that you've created. You got to actually step out of that venture and do something different. So, and of course, any of us that have raced, any of us that train for, marathons, Ironmans, etc., know that, because you have a distance day or you have a speed day, and that is to break the barrier for yourself. And then the last one being E, I used to call it execute. And in my book that I'm launching in January, Live Your Miracle, the E completely shifted. So it's chapter 12, and it completely shifted from executing to enjoying the process, enjoying the journey. And often those of us that are, I don't care if you're a pro athlete or a recreational athlete or a age grouper, competitor, if you're not enjoying the journey, then you're literally not living. You think you are, but if you're not enjoying it, really enjoying every moment of that journey, then if you're not doing that, you're dying. You're not really living. You're not living what's possible. And for those achievers, for us that are achievers, and I speak of myself, of course, I'm an achiever in life. sometimes you got to create a timeout to really sit with what is it about me that is just going after the next thing versus enjoying the moment.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ash. And I wanted to delve into something that you said on that show with Steve Weatherford. And it was interesting because you said that despite you being so successful, and I know you didn't call yourself successful, but obviously you are a successful athlete as well as a very successful business person, you got to the point where you were setting goals and you were achieving them. You're setting another goal, achieving, setting, achieve. And there was something missing in your life. And tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, for me, it's interesting is some of us don't really tune into what's missing. And for me, I needed an interruption to actually recognize that there was something missing. And it's not, because I was going from one thing to another and to another. And for most people, they would come to me and say, wow, how do you live? How do you fit it all in? How do you create all this stuff? You've got your dream home. You've got, you're doing Ironmans all over the world. You travel, you have freedom, you have the success in your career. Like, how do you fit it all in? How do you do that? And for me at the time, I wasn't married or had any kids. So I'm like, well, it's really possible for everybody. And it is. And I still stand in that space that it's totally possible. But I needed to tune out of the life that I'd created to kind of look at what are some desires that I really have and what are things that are keeping me from creating those desires. And so for me, I wasn't even aware of that thing that was missing until I really tuned out. I needed an interruption. I needed a pattern interrupt, something to change. And so, lucky for me, that pattern interrupt wasn't even a choice. It just literally happened. So I met my wife, who is my wife today, actually, and my wife, Shanda Sumter. And when I met my wife, she had done so much work on herself that she was tuned into, seeing something greater than I even saw for myself. A life that was, she really recognized it without even telling me that she saw it, which was really powerful. I mean, I don't know, because it's very easy for us to see something missing for somebody else and then actually point it out for them versus empowering them to see it for themselves. So she was able to empowered me to see something within me that wasn't working. And what I realized in taking the time out from just going after the next thing and the next thing and the next accomplishment, but just taking time out, what I recognize is, wow, what I really want is an incredible relationship. What I really want is to enjoy every aspect of life, not just do things and accomplish things as a way of like saying, oh, I feel fulfilled, but to be able to look at a rainbow and actually recognize that that rainbow is incredible and beautiful. Like, take the time out to actually see that, to be able to literally, like, people say, stop and smell the flowers. I didn't even get what that meant. I thought it was just stop, smell the flowers, do it, and move forward. And I could literally stop and smell the flowers in every aspect of life now, even when there's a moment with my son or my wife or my friends. We had an amazing night last night, carving, pumpkins for Halloween. And I got to enjoy every ounce of that and smell that and experience that and be a part of that. And that was really missing for me. For me, it was the way I did life in the past was you do a race, you complete it, go, okay, what's next? I could do it faster. I could go to the next race. I could go to another part of the world. Maybe I go do a ultra Ironman, or maybe I do and eventually it would have ended up being in the ultra Ironmans. And it would have been this continuous search for meaning in life, versus looking at every moment as there is a meaning there. There's an opportunity to create something amazing and actually enjoy that moment and experience that moment and feel that moment, whatever that moment may be. So make it, I believe your question was, how did you take that moment out? I believe either an interruption will be created for you and you become and create the opportunity to look at it, or you got to be the interruption for yourself to notice that. For me, it was relationships. I didn't feel, let me just say that, before that moment, before this experience that I was able to create for myself over a 3.5 year period, I couldn't really feel. I was robotic. I was driven by accomplishing. I was driven by mechanically going through obstacles and creating things. And on the surface, I looked extremely happy. On the surface, I looked extremely wealthy. I was. On the surface, I look extremely accomplished, and which I was. But if you were to take off that surface, if you were to take that layer of paint off, or a layer of, mask off or peel off, when you peel that layer off, what you'll find, what you would have seen is someone that was feeling empty, alone, disconnected, unintimate, feeling like he's not able to love, didn't even know the meaning of what love really, truly, authentically meant. You would have found someone that felt empty. Wherein to most people, they looked up at me and said, wow, how do I become him in corporate? Or how do I become him as an athletic person, as an amateur athlete? Or how do I become him so that I can attract these things, these objects? And that was a huge wake-up call, because what I really discovered is my belief system was ruling me. And that belief system of constantly going for the next thing, which was a very critical mind towards myself, was actually also critical of others. And so it would keep me from everything that I always wanted, which was a family, a relationship, an incredible connected relationship. And so constantly I was repeating this cycle of meeting women, being in a relationship, and then saying, oh, this is not going to work out for me, or they're not good, they're not exactly what I'm looking for. And so I would be so critical to a point that no one was ever good enough. And I would have that with friends, family, and women that I wanted to be in a relationship with. So repeating that cycle was just a belief system that I adopted at a very, very early age. And I wasn't even accepting of myself. So how could I be accepting of others?
That's fascinating. And so essentially you were just trying to prove yourself the whole time?
Yeah, I think the way I would describe it is I was in a lifetime war for over 30 years that started at a very young age with myself and with others. And it was awesome to have peace. And I say, unless many people, and I didn't even know it. That's what's crazy. Can you imagine being at war without even knowing it?
I can, because I actually think it's very common especially in the sort of A-type personality, competitive people, and they tend to, funnily enough, follow those type of sports like triathlons, where it's almost like execution leads the way and enjoyment doesn't really come into play at all.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, I could totally relate to that. I mean, it's like you finish your Ironman, you're in complete misery in the middle of the run, and then you finish and you go, okay, when is the next race? Which one do I go after now? And I mean, I can relate to that. I mean, I'm really grateful for the race. I mean, I don't want to put distance races down by any means, because I believe it's possible to compete and enjoy the process. That's really what I coach by now, and that's really the stance I am in the world. Is there's nothing wrong with challenging yourself. There's nothing wrong with any of it. What doesn't work about it is if you're challenging yourself and you're not enjoying your life, every moment of it, and you're doing it for some other reason, then there's an opportunity for you to really look at that.
It's interesting, actually. And Steve Weatherford pointed this out as well. He was saying on his show that I guess it's almost like he didn't want to stop, because once you do, you may not achieve as well. And in actual fact, he now gets better achievements and enjoys along the way.
Yeah. In fact, Steve was over here last night, and he and his family were here. We were carving pumpkins together, and it's interesting, And I've been working with Steve and coaching Steve along this journey where he's had some self-discovery and breakthroughs, And he'd be very open in sharing this. So I'm not sharing anything in confidence. I take confidentiality very seriously, and so those that work with me, we don't talk about it typically. But with Steve, he's open and he's really committed to everyone else having these discoveries. So we were talking, and and I could still see it in both of us. We're doing the pumpkins, and I can totally see he goes in his corner with his tools, and he's like really carving his pumpkin away, and the kids are carving theirs away, and I'm standing in the corner, and I'm like, hey, you know what? And so there's a moment that I had to interrupt myself. So it's not like you recognize this about yourself and it's completely over and it's gone. No. It's like fear. Most people think they have to conquer fear. They have to overcome fear. And just like fear, this this hunger for accomplishment will not go away in us, those A-type personalities, it doesn't go away. But if you can be with it, if you can be with fear, then you can create with fear. So if you can be with your A-type personality that has to accomplish and get things done, then you can be with it. And so yesterday I could see us, like the two of us are kind of going isolated places. We're like, I'm going to create the most killer pumpkin ever, it's going to look so awesome. And he's there with his tools and he's working on it and I'm working on it. And immediately I have this awareness. I'm like, oh, I got to create connection. This pumpkin thing, we are here as a family. We're here as 3 families with our kids. And I know that my go-to is going to be go to create it, go be the best, versus like, hey, let's create connection. Let's create fun. Let's create togetherness. And that's what I want. That's why we have we have it at our house, because we want to create that for each other. So we bring it together. And so it's getting an understanding of what is your normal operating system and how do you be with that, make it workable towards your vision of what you really want in life, and stop lying to yourself. Because if I was being really honest with myself over the X amount of years that I was doing Ironman, I was doing 2 to 3 Ironmans a year. There were times I was doing 2 to 3 Ironmans a year. And if I was really honest with myself, there was a void. There was something missing. And I also wanted recognition. I wanted recognition that I'm doing these cool events. And so it didn't require me doing Ironmans and training like 30 hours a week to create that. I could have created that anywhere, at any time. I could have created that anywhere at any time. I could have created community anywhere at any time, and it didn't have to look a certain way. So it's like looking at that, looking deep inside yourself and what do you really want in your life, because this is the only life you have, and then connecting to what's working and creating that, what's not working and creating that, and shifting that. And then when you're being with yourself in that deep way, it changes everything. And I'll give you a simple example that's not A-type personality, because there may not be everyone that's A-type personality here. There are some people that love to be seen and recognized, yet they are not seen or recognized because they're quiet, because they're to themselves. They're introverted, let's say. And sometimes those introverted people will do everything for everybody else. They'll do it for everybody else. They'll support everybody else. They'll connect with everybody else. They'll do it for other people. But when it really comes down for themselves to step in and be something or voice their opinion or share, they'll clam up and not do anything. So that doesn't work in them creating something that they may know better than anybody else because they don't believe in themselves enough. But it does work in terms of them supporting other people. So some of it works. Don't stop supporting other people, but also be powerful enough to support yourself. And in the plane, they say put your oxygen mask on first before you put the other person on. Because if you don't have yours on, chances of you supporting other people or helping other people, it's not there. You're too depleted to do so. So this is just an understanding, for us, all human beings, we all have some things that are working for us and doesn't work for us. Unfortunately, we make it good or bad. And unfortunately, we mask it with something different than what's really possible.
Interesting. So, Ash, have you got any advice? You mentioned that your life was interrupted, not really by choice, because obviously your wife and kid came along, and that was a blessing in disguise. But what if you feel like you're on that train, potentially either that A-type that we were discussing or even not, even that introvert? What can you do if you don't have an interruption? How do you interrupt yourself, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, good question. I think number one is just taking a deep look at your life. And, you could do this really simply by just writing down on a sheet of paper, getting connected with your vision. I call it your miracle, because a vision still is within parameters of what you're creating. A vision is like, okay, I want to create X, and you have a vision for that, and you go after it. A miracle is something that's totally unaware to you. Like it is like not there. Like you don't see it as a possibility even. There are some conversations that stop you. So number one is getting clear. What does that miracle look like for you? And the way to get to a miracle is this. You just got to be very willing to be very honest with yourself, because the truth is the people around us, they may be seeing things that are there that stop us from creating everything we want, but they're not going to be, it's not like they don't care enough, but they care about themselves more than they care about you. So they care about looking good. They care about you liking them. They care about you, being there for them. So they're not going to be really honest with you because they're afraid of losing the relationship. So you got to be honest with yourself, number one. And then you got to surround yourself with people that are willing to be really, truly, brutally honest with you about things that don't work for you. So for example, I have friends in my life that if something goes on with me and my wife, I don't go to everybody around me. I don't talk about our relationship to the public, but I go to friends. Like I have one friend specifically that I go to with my relationship with my wife, and he cares enough about me to be really honest with me. So when I say, oh my gosh, can you believe Shanda did this, I felt so controlled. He goes, really? You're going to talk about your wife that way? Like he really cares enough to be honest with me. And because the truth is, if I feel controlled, then it has nothing to do with my wife. It has to do with me. So number one, surround yourself with people that are willing to be super honest with you. And then you got to be willing to be honest enough with yourself. So write down on a sheet of paper everywhere you're lying to yourself. Like, I'm not good enough to do X. I can't do X. I feel like, the reason I am ... is because of this. And then be willing to look at it from a standpoint of not being a victim to any of it, but from a standpoint of being totally responsible, meaning that it has everything to do with you that you've created this. So for me, if I was to go back in a space where I would have done this exercise before this experience, I would have said, I feel like my friends abandoned me. I feel like, these women, I don't know, there's no women that are like, that I can really love. I can't feel like they're loving me, If I'm really being honest with myself, I'm so judgmental and critical of people. If I was to go back, I would have wrote this list. And it's not a way to beat yourself up. It's a way to just look at that and then look at, when does this start for you? When did this all start? Because the truth is, my 2-year-old has no judgment. He's 3.5 now, but my 3.5-year-old son, he will go up to a stranger and hug them. Doesn't matter what they look like, who they are, if they know them or don't know them, there's like zero judgment in their eyes. And it's really about rebirthing your authenticity. So my wife and I, we have a process that we put leaders through, and it's only for entrepreneurs, professional athletes, corporate executives, musicians, artists, directors, etc. And it's this process of rebirth. That's the best way I could describe it. It's a process where you get to be intimate with areas in your life that's not working for you and really confront those and connect back with your 2-year-old version of yourself and bring back that person to birth. And if you do that, then, a 2-year-old is super joyful. A 2-year-old believes everything is possible. Like, you could be the president of the United States, A 2-year-old believes every relationship can work. Like, they love everybody authentically. They don't care about what they look like, what their job is, ... They care about the person, the internal person. And if you could give birth to that person, again, inside yourself, then life becomes much grander. And my 2-year-old thinks everything is amazing. Like, I was carving this pumpkin last night, and I had the green pumpkin that just got a lot of like crazy guts and stuff in it. And I was like I'm like, hey Zach, check this out. And I'm like taking it out. He goes, oh Dad, so cool. And that person doesn't judge anything. Just everything is so cool to them. And if my son was to go do an Ironman, like, he runs with us, we have him run the last mile with us, my wife and I, and he just loves it. He doesn't say, oh, I have to run. Oh, I got to go do this training. No, he goes, oh, can we go running? Like, we get back, he wants to go running. We right now it's all about him being in the tub and taking dives in the tub. He loves it. It's not like I have to wash myself. He loves it. So having that view on life is just really powerful. And it's about going back and seeing when your belief system was created, and then confronting those belief systems, feeling it, experiencing it, and then letting it go, because every day is so freaking precious.
It's interesting, Ash, and I guess I just want to play devil's advocate for a moment. You've obviously achieved a lot in your life, and I know you had that execute as opposed to enjoy. But if you hadn't have had that, I guess, belief system, do you think you actually would have achieved what you had? especially around the fitness?
Yeah, great question. I believe so. I would have done so with even more joy in the process. I would have really enjoyed the game, like crossing Kona. I didn't get to train like I would have normally trained for Kona because I got in and we had a little boy, and so my wife owns a business, and so I had to play partnership and really prioritize what's really more important to me. And so I didn't perform well doing Kona. I just barely finished the race, actually, but I finished. I was committed to finishing. And if I would have done it with the dialogue that I had prior to, this, call it transformational experience, this shift in my belief system, I would have really beat myself up, and I would have not enjoyed finishing that race.
Interesting.
So I guess, does it really matter? Because we define success as doing things. In our society, in America especially, we define success as what did you do, where are your credentials, and where is your trophies? And I think all the trophies, Steve Jobs, for example, we could say he had some pretty big trophies. He had family, a great business that he ended up coming back, a great success story. He was a great speaker. He wrote a number of books. He had tremendous impact in the world. But really, like, if you die without relationships and joy and passion and living from that perspective and really living everything that's inside you outward, like there are some people that hold back a lot. Like for me, I didn't hold back. I was like all in. And there's some people that hold back. So if you're holding back and you die and you don't let it all out, is that a life worth living? And the opposite is true as well. If you did all of it, you did, but you never took the time out to enjoy it and be in peace. And you did life. You did it. But there were some things inside you that stopped you, and some things maybe, but you did everything in life. You had all the trophies. You had all the wealth. You had all the homes. You had it all, but you had no relationships. Not even a relationship with yourself. Really, authentically, a relationship with yourself, like peace of loving yourself. Enough. And you did things for everybody else but for yourself. Like you did it to look good. You did it to accomplish something so that people could see you. You created wealth so that you are important. Like if you did it that way, then are you really living?
Interesting. And Ali Fitness Podcast is all about bringing health into fitness. And do you feel that since you've been through your transformational experience that you've become more healthy?
Yeah, I would say there's so much research now around our neural pathways. So I'll bring in a little bit of research for us analytical folks like myself. So there's so much research now on new neural pathways being developed based on shift in behaviors, and that you have the possibility to create new neural pathways. So I would say if you have the ability to improve, your biology in any way, I think there's value in that. And that value equates to health. And if you really know how much you matter, from a perspective of relationships and love and connection and intimacy, and also for yourself, to feel that way for yourself. If you know that, I believe that improves your well-being, your mental well-being. And what's interesting is there's been a research study, and I believe it was, I want to say Stanford or Harvard Medical. I want to say Stanford, I believe it is. And they did a research on if you have love in your life and your relationship is healthy with your number one person in your life, with that being your spouse or your partner, then you will naturally live a longer, healthier life. And that's more important than what you do in terms of nutrition and food. So who do you have the number one relationship with more frequently than anybody else? Yourself. So if you are giving yourself a ton of love and appreciation, and you have that dialogue within, not only just faking it, but you actually have that with yourself, that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody, that you're great, you're perfect just the way you are, just the way you've been created, then naturally you are living a healthier life. And even if you're eating donuts and smoking a cigarette, if you love yourself, I believe that means something.
That's a perfect note to end this discussion. And Ash, I'm inspired by the way you've just expanded from every part of your life, and now you're out there to help others. What exactly is your mission?
It's interesting because it's evolving. And, I started Hyburst as a vision for a healthy world. We give birth to 1 million plastic bottles a minute, and that's my experience in my corporate background. When I made this choice, I was in front of a major food and beverage manufacturer negotiating my contract, and I just said, I can't continue because it's not aligned with my vision anymore. I don't care what the finances look like. So I basically told the CEO and the vice chairman of the board, no, I just can't be part of this any longer. So my vision, number one, is that we create a healthy world for future generations. So we give birth to 1 million plastic bottles because of the demand of consumers to have convenient beverages. So my vision is to stop that. And it's also to have nutrition supplement manufacturers bring authentic, real food-based product to the marketplace and encourage people to have real food. I love that Patagonia says, don't buy our product. We say the same thing. We say, don't buy our product at Hyburst, because there's nothing better than taking red beets, putting water and sea salt, great electrolyte drink, and also great recovery drink. And you can make it taste good with lemon and other things, of course, and ginger. So it's really possible for you to create your own electrolyte drinks at home. But if you're going to take something off the shelf, take the best product off the shelf that's made with integrity, which is us, Hyburst. So my vision is to eliminate the plastic waste. We give birth again to 1 million bottles a minute because of consumers' demand. And we'll give birth to 255 children every minute. So if you do the math, bottles live 500 to 1,000 years. Less than 30% are recycled. So that's 700,000 bottles a minute that continue to live in the world. And the 255 children die after 80 years old. So we're literally giving birth to items in the world that will last 5 times to 10 times the life expectancy of a human being. So we really need to carefully look at that as consumers and shift our behavior. It's a serious epidemic, and I was a part of it, and I'm choosing not to be a part of it anymore. So that's number one. Number two, my mission is with Hyburst to give birth to miracles in everyone's life. Hyburst and my book, Live Your Miracle, is conceptually my head for over 12 years, but never came to birth. And it didn't come to birth because I was getting in my own way. So I want everyone to get out of their own way and cause whatever is inside them, because you're so capable. And I'm speaking to the audience now. You are so capable. And I just want you to put yourself out of your own way so you could create that in your life. And so that's what my Live Your Miracle book is about. That's what my Live Your Miracle program's all about. And then lastly, what I'm really committed to is everyone being their 2-year-old version of themselves.
I love that. So in summary then, you've given us some great tips about where to start. Get honest with yourself and surround yourself with people that'll be honest with you. And then you've mentioned your Birth to Miracles and a program. Where can people find out more about that program?
Yeah, so here's my recognition. Follow me at FitXTalks on Instagram, Facebook. You can also follow our podcast on iTunes and other platforms that have podcasts. You can follow us over there, and you can also jump on liveyourmiracle.com.
Awesome. And we'll obviously include all of those in the show notes. And Ash, before I let you go, I've got a bit of a personal question for you. Not that I haven't delved into your personal life already. Do you have a tattoo?
I do not have a tattoo.
Have you thought about it?
Yeah, I actually have thought about it in the past. It's not something that I intend to put on my body at this point. Of course, I coach everyone to be open, so I keep myself open always. At the same time, it's just something that's not in my space right now. Long time ago, I was told, treat your body like a temple, and I'm committed to that. There was a lot of times that I thought about it because I was in the Marine Corps, so I thought about it in the Marine Corps. Doing Ironmans, I was like, oh, I want to show that. And it's like, that became something to show versus who I am.
Cool. I love it. Awesome. Ash, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate all your tips. And we now know how to get a bit more healthy.
Yeah. Thank you, Ali. It's been an honor to be here. Thanks again for asking me to join.
Excellent. For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.